Welcome to the Men of Iron podcast, changing a culture one man at a time. At Men of Iron, we equip men and grow godly leaders through creating and sustaining one-to-one and micro-group mentorships. Go to menofiron.org for more info. Thanks for listening. What is up? Welcome to the Men of Iron podcast, episode 20. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. It's Steve, Garrett, and Justin, live from Supply. What's up, boys?
Hola, ¿cómo está?
Feliz Navidad.
Man,
Hey,
how was your Christmas?
Man, Christmas was fun and chaotic, but it was good, man. Yeah, my wife, I think she posted on Facebook, she says, it gets more exciting each year, but it gets more, exhausting each year, too.
I think probably with every kid you add to, J-Dub can probably speak into this, though.
Yeah.
Gets a little crazier.
Yeah, J-Dub's got all kinds of critters walking around his house.
There's more joy and more love in the house.
He just called your kids critters, by the way.
Yeah.
If you caught that.
That's true.
Wow. We all
On any given day.
Well,
Oh, hey.
Hey,
that's
silence
a
your phone,
podcast
please.
now. It's a podcast
My
now.
wife wanted to be on the podcast so badly that she
Oh, man. Shout out to Jenna.
A live Vox. That doesn't happen very
I think
often.
she's just mad that we're not filming it in Watkins' kitchen
That's
today.
true.
You
That
know?
was a treat.
Yeah.
When she got locked in the bedroom. Yeah, that was good.
Well, I just want to mention that this is episode 20. We were just talking about this before we went on air here. And last year this time, we were filming number 1.
We were failing hardcore.
And we were
Yeah.
back here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. It's good stuff, though, man.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's cool to kind of see how the year progressed. We had a lot of awesome episodes. The ones that stands out would probably be Seth Obet's. That one
Yeah.
was phenomenal.
I think it's our most viewed and
Most listened to. Brian Dawkins, of course, might be my personal favorite.
Steve's still fanboying out
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, I was pacing back and forth before we went live for that one. So Christmas, you guys got any good Christmas stories from Christmas 2018?
I mean, yeah, it's Christmas is good. I always struggle to I don't want to say find joy during Christmas, but it's because that's not the right word. But I always struggle with like the consumer side of it all versus what are we really teaching our children? We can say whatever we want to say about what's the real reason for Christmas, but like the bottom line is like how are we really doing that inside of our homes? So I always tend to struggle with that a little bit. I feel like we get more hyped up about getting trees up and lights and getting in the Christmas spirit than we really do about some other things in life as parents and as men of our households, and so I'm not here to be a Grinch. So please understand that.
Scrooge. Where's Christmas lights at?
Yeah. But I every year it comes around, I struggle, and it's more of an internal, and it's hard I've found it to be difficult to talk about because you don't want to be Scrooge, right? You don't want to be the Grinch. You don't want to be that guy that's like, I'm struggling with this. But I do, if I'm really honest. I struggle with it every year. It's not that I don't want my kids to be excited about gifts, but it's like, man, there's got to be more to it than this, right? And so, yeah, I don't know about your experience with it, but it's.
I think it's a healthy struggle. I was thinking just kind of last night in the quiet of the night, kind of after everything. We even mentioned this in our Men of Iron Christmas video that we did. Is we hope you find rest in this Christmas season. I don't think I found any rest during those 4 days.
No,
it's just crazy. It's just
yeah.
like nonstop from place to place, and there's not much rest. You're just exhausted. Like I woke up this morning feeling like I'd worked a whole work week or something.
It is. The family stuff is good, right? Like it's good to be with family. It's good to be at home with our kids, and that's all good stuff. But yeah, the running around, I don't know. I'm a terrible gift giver, so I feel pressure every year, and I that's on me. All right, it's on me. I get it, but I'm just like, man, I have a hard time understanding or believing that this is really what God wants for us during this season. But anyway, well, Merry Christmas to our listeners and viewers. How about JW? I want to hear JW's take on this.
I love Christmas. There's one of the three of us who love Christmas.
Hey, I love Christmas. I'm just saying
I do too.
It's
I love
busy.
Christmas. I struggle with the other side of it.
Absolutely, and we're in the same boat. We've talked about that a lot. Every year we have the same conversations about it as a family and as parents. Like, how do we? Same thing. Like, we can say those things. How did the practice of those values actually play out? And I think for us, it's been trying to minimize how much we give to our kids, because that becomes entitlement, and they've got enough stuff. And how do we get them to give? How do we get, so like Jansen bought us gifts this year, which I think is a good practice, and used his own money. We didn't give him his, but you've got money, you do it. And spending a lot of time with family, and we did a lot of like Advent readings throughout the season, but it is tricky. It's tough, because we're surrounded by a culture that it's all about what you give to people who already have enough and too much stuff in the first place.
Right. Well, Merry Christmas anyway.
That's a whole other podcast on Christmas.
We just crushed everybody's Christmas spirit. It's all right. It's December 26th.
It's not. It's the reality of it. I think a lot of people feel that.
Yeah.
I do. I feel like a lot of people probably struggle with it. And yeah.
A great resource, plug to give an answer, Advent Conspiracy.
Yes.
The Advent Conspiracy is a great group and movement that takes a look at time and giving and all those kind of things, and has some good thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Like I said, I think it's a healthy struggle. We should be wrestling with this and talking about this, so I think it was good.
Don't be calling me Scrooge, J-Dub.
Well, this podcast number 20 is brought to you by Utility Keystone Trailer Sales in Manheim, PA. Shout out Bear Nation. Over 40 years in the industry, UKTS offers a full line of utility products, including truck body kits, refrigerated dry van, and flatbed trailers. Go to utilitykeystone.com to find out more. Shout out UKTS. Man, that sun is beaming in your face right now.
It feels good. I'm getting a tan on December 26th.
And burnt corneas.
You literally look like an angel if anybody's watching our video feed right now. Well, today's episode is 2018, a year in review. Man, it was an awesome year for Men of Iron. I think we mentioned a lot of it being chaotic, and G, you can speak into this, but it was a messy but great year.
Yeah, I think I said in the, I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but our celebration report that went out, there were times this year that it felt messy, chaotic, confusing, right? But really, somebody asked me the other day, like, what would be the theme of your year? And it's interesting because I feel like the theme of 2018 was new life. Like, there's just a ton of new life. And it really lines up with, at least the studying that I've done, if we go back and you look at the Jewish calendar, like if we were to be following the Jewish calendar to this day, which the culture we live in does not, but if we were, it would be in that 7-year cycle. 2018 in September would have ended the third year. And which, if you look at creation, the third day, there's a lot of new life on that third day, which kind of lines up with the theme of the year of new life. And I'm sure we're going to hit on some of this stuff, but we had a new model that we're talking about, that we're implementing. We had a new kind of new consistency, new clarity on who we are, why we exist. That brought a lot of new life. We had new hires. 3 new hires, new life. This podcast was new, new life, right? Went to South Africa, international, new life, right? Like all this new stuff.
Right.
New office in Canton, Ohio, new life.
Yep.
Biggest fundraiser in the history of Men of Iron. Like just new adventures, new life was kind of the consistent theme. But among that, I just found it to be really beautiful and really peaceful in the fact that even in the midst of all that chaos, even in the midst of all that confusion and that messiness, like there was new life. Like God is so faithful. And I think that's a general theme that we see even through Scripture, right? There's new life even in the midst of all that. And so, yeah, it was messy, chaotic, and confusing, but from it all came a lot of new life, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, I just love what we've kind of branded our end-of-year report as a celebration report, because as you look back on just even these things we mentioned here, it is a celebration to see what God has done. Like even in that messy, chaotic time, so much good came out of it. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, it's another like resource plug. Not to go crazy in the resources, but if you want to follow a guy that talks a lot about timing, God's timing and calendar and how that applies to our lives, check out 7and50rhymes.com. Barry Miller. It's a great resource. He's written a book that I highly recommend his book. But yeah, just I've really been following his stuff and trying to learn from him a little bit over the last couple of years. And I look back at how the 7-year cycle plays into today's culture, and man, so much of like what I've personally experienced and organizationally, it really follows that 7-year cycle. So just really interesting stuff.
We kind of talked about it just now, G, the 5F model. Could you kind of speak into that? It was a big transition year for us through the Strong 27 mentorship, and just kind of speak into the 5F model, what it's all about, and how it's impacted men this year.
Yeah. Before I do that, I'm going to throw a little bit of curveball here to JW.
Uh-oh. Watch out.
But, JW, I'd be interested to hear your take. I mean, I know we've talked a little bit individually about 2018 with Men of Iron, but like you're a new staff member. Like for our viewers and listeners, like what is your take on this whole Men of Iron 2018? Like your experience and like what's a general theme for you? Like what would you have taken away?
Yeah, I think that's it started in March, and it was kind of in the midst of a lot of transition and mess, and that's what we talked about at our staff retreat was God creating out of the mess and creating, and it's very biblical, nice, right? Like taking the void and the darkness and creating order and light. And I think that's part of the experience has been, okay, wow, there's a lot of things that we're seeking clarity on. We're getting new projects, new systems, new staff, new all this stuff, and it comes with tension points and figuring things out. But it's just been neat to see how God's been just that steady presence and direction through it all, and I think celebrating what He has done through that mess and creating things that are new and blinding, blinding light.
It's all just coming down on Justin right now. Good stuff. Well, I will get into the 5F model. This was kind of our first year. We had always introduced this 5F model in our trainings, and we've always given it as like a tool for guys to use and to think about. But 2018 was the first year that we said, hey, we're going to make this kind of a mandatory staple, for Men of Iron, for Strong 27, for mentors and proteges. And really the 5F model is really simple. It's this idea of faith, family, friends, fitness, and finances. And we looked at that model and we're like, all right, we didn't create that. It's been around for a long time. Right. But whoever came up with it, thank you. But anyway, I think what it comes down to is we looked at those 5Fs of faith, family, friends, fitness, and finances, and we said, boy, that really kind of really defines a man's life. There's more into it than that. I've heard of even Vince Miller from Resolute has an 8F model. I think he includes fun, food, and future. Okay. In his, and so, but really the reason that I decided to say, hey, this needs to happen for Men of Iron in regards to what we're gonna use for mentors and proteges is because I started doing it on my own in my own personal life, and as I started setting some goals and objectives for my own personal life, what I ended up doing was it had such an impact on me that I took it into my marriage, and I took it to Eden. And so Eden and I would start doing some quarterly retreats or semi-annual retreats to get away and look at our 5Fs, not just individually, but together. Like, how does this apply to our marriage? How does this apply to us as parents? But really, the 5F model is simple. It's you take a look and you evaluate. You look back initially. Like, you look back at your life. You look back at the last year. How have I been doing these areas? Mm-hmm. You realize very quickly how out of balance you have become. Yep. And so that's why we decided to go on this 90-day focus, is because when we were giving guys the flexibility to say, what are your 5F goals for the year? Guys can't stay focused for more than 90 days, man. It's just, I can't stay focused for more than 90 minutes. Right. So, like, you've got to shorten that gap a little bit, shorten that window. But you take a look back and you say, okay, hey, my goals for the next 90 days in these areas are X, Y, and Z. And you keep it simple. We say smart, be specific, let it be measurable. But, like, we don't want there to be 4 or 5 goals under faith. We don't want there to be 4 or 5 goals under family. Like 1, maybe 2 at the max, that you're going to say, this is what I want to get done in the next 90 days. And so, for Men of Iron, we've taken the stance that I don't think anybody listening to this or any of you would disagree with this, but, a man's faith is his foundation. Yep. And if he can get that built and built that solid, then everything else can be built on top of that. But what we were finding in the past, Steve, was that all these mentors and proteges that were coming into the ministry, coming into the program, our natural tendency as men is to identify our problems and then what? We want to solve them and fix them. Right. And so what we were finding was guys were having marriage problems, they were having financial problems, whatever the issue was, they're identifying it and they're saying, okay, I'm going to fix this. Well, they were going right to the issue. And so many times what we were finding is in this journey of mentorship, very few mentors and proteges were actually spending time building spiritual disciplines of, getting into the Word, getting into prayer, getting into solitude. And from my perspective and our team's perspective, it was like, hey, if these things are getting built and developed and they're consistent in a man's life, well then, guess what? Like, everything else can be built on that. But that's got to be the foundation. And so our focus with this 5F model was really, for the first 90 days of mentorship, to focus specifically on a man's faith, right. And building those spiritual disciplines, because it's upon that everything else can be built then. Now we can start getting into my marriage stuff. Now we can start getting into my financial stuff. Now we can start getting into the family. Like, we can start getting into all that. Yeah. But we really want to narrow that focus in on a man's faith in the first 90 days. So that was introduced this year, and we're moving forward with it, and it's going to continue to grow and expand, and we're excited about it.
Yeah, I think it's brought so much clarity to mentorships through Strong 27, and it's given guys focus. Like, it's hard. It's impossible almost to kind of look a year out and have this checklist of 20 things. It's good to create goals for the year, but to have this checklist of 20 things that you want to accomplish, but to have that 90-day focus and building on that foundation of faith is so vital.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. So, yeah, 5F model. J-Dub, any thoughts on that?
It's great. No, I won't add much to it, but it, like you already said, like, it creates a foundation, and it gives some clarity, and it's more measurable and attainable to have it in 90-day chunks that builds on one another. So I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think, if we take a look a year in review and you go back, like I've mentioned it already, this better clarity on why we exist, of creating and sustaining mentorships, right, to equip men and grow godly leaders and to equip them and all those good things. Those are all good things. New hires, Brian Ziegler, Justin, Joel, just a lot of good stuff happening there, this podcast. But in reality, I think one of the biggest things, which at least to me personally, this was one of the bigger things, was to realize, oh my gosh, we have a second office.
Yeah.
Like Canton, Ohio, when we brought Brian on, we're like, well,
it's crazy.
We need a place for BZ to work, and being part of that collaborative partnership with the One Center for Leadership in Canton is good stuff. So,
so if you're in the Canton, Ohio area, go pop in and say hi to BZ for us.
Yeah, buy him lunch. I don't think he drinks coffee, but he pounds Monster energy drinks.
Anything energy drink. Yeah, bring him some Red Bulls or Monster energy drinks. He'll love you forever.
Absolutely.
So before we close out with kind of a Q&A, you want to touch on 2019 at all? What are you excited about? Some new things on the horizon for Men of Iron?
2019?
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah, I think, Justin, why don't you get into a little bit of 2019 a little bit and talk about that?
Yeah. Man, some of the things that speaking of foundations, with all the craziness that we've been kind of dealing with and setting up new systems for those, a new email server, a new CRM system, just kind of how a new login portal for our guys in the program, just a lot of new things that we worked on throughout 2018 to set us up for 2019 in a really exciting way. I think it's going to benefit all of our advocates, in whether you're giving financially, whether you're participating as a mentor, protege, director. We want to just really serve those relationships really well. And I think those systems and those things that we're putting in place for 2019 are going to really help us to do that really well. So I'm excited for that, even though it's taken a lot coming out of the mess and seeing some hope on the other side. So
we've talked about this internally too. I think 2019 will still be kind of in that chaotic messiness.
Yeah. Not quite out of it yet.
No, but that's good, man. Well, as we kind of, talk about 2019, I think we'll get into this. We put out a thing on Instagram and Facebook. Any questions you guys had for us as an organization, and these are a couple that stood out. So the first one is from Ryan in Mount Joy, PA.
Which I'm just looking at his Instagram. I think I know this cat.
Yeah, okay. It's
Ryan did some grappling.
Stormy Ryan 33 on Instagram. Shout out Ryan. But this is a question we get often, so I think it's important to talk about, especially as we head into 2019 and our systems and our model changes. Is how can I become a protege? Ryan wants to know.
Hey, that's a great question, Ryan. I'm glad you asked, man. First off, just shoot me an email or send me a message on Facebook or something. I can give you some more details. But we've always been an organization that has been this church partner model, meaning you had to kind of go to one of our church partners to get involved. And we realized that was a little bit of a chink in our armor. We love the local church, but we realized is that we were getting a lot of men that were like, hey, maybe I don't go to church. Right. Or I've been burned by the church or whatever it may be, and I'm not going back, and I desperately want a mentor, and we've had a lot of success with this new model of getting out into communities and kind of identifying the community model. So we've been doing that, but what we've been even expand on that a little bit further is going more of a director model. So right. Now we're finding men that would say, hey, I've got 5 or 6 men that I think could serve as mentors. Mentors are now reaching out to proteges. And so what we want to eventually get to into 2020 is that you can be anybody, not just a director, not just a community leader, but that you could be exactly like, whoever submitted this question and saying, I want to be a protege, and that you can actually go through the process on our website to do that. Yeah. Ryan, I would say if you're listening for the time being, what we would like to do is probably connect you with a current director in that Mount Joy area or in your area, wherever you are in the nation. Let us know where you're at. We can hopefully set you up with somebody that we're connected to. And if not, if we can't do that, at least we can equip you with some resources to go out and find your own mentor, and we can help you get trained up and get you get you going that way. But for the time being, I would say, how can you become a protege? Is just let us know, send us some information, and we'll do what we can to hook you up with the right mentor and get you hooked up.
Yep, We'll be in touch. Yeah, it's a great question. We get that often. So it's exciting to think about it's probably a 2020 thing where a guy can just come on our website and, like Ryan, and just get plugged in right away.
Right.
That's really where we want to take it. I think it's exciting to think about.
We do have, there's been a couple situations even the end of this year here where there's been some guys that want to mentor somebody, and so they've reached out, hey, I don't want to be a director, I don't want to oversee other mentors, but can I just start mentoring somebody? In that case, we're just sending them the resources and telling them to join us at one of our trainings and letting us know how it's going from there. So you can get involved.
Awesome. Well, we're going to close it out with this question from AB in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He submitted us on Instagram at the.ab is, if depth is the goal for male relationships, what have we discovered as staples to build life cycling deep relationships that demonstrate ripple, as in multiplication, not addition, as in a leader, not a follower? Man, AB is a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, this is a very in-depth question. But basically, if I could summarize that, it's basically how are we assuring that multiplication is taking place and not just adding more mentors and proteges?
Yeah.
Justin?
Yeah, and I think that's the goal of discipleship and mentorship, and that's what Christ has called us to, not just to add numbers for the sake of numbers and not a lot of depth. How do we multiply? Because the call has been is the same. It's not, there's just certain people who follow Jesus that should make other disciples. He says, no, go into all the world and make disciples and pass on the DNA. And you see what Jesus did with his disciples. Life sharing and teaching and intentionality and investing in them, and he says, do the same thing. I want everyone to do the same thing. And so I think that's an issue of our church culture today, is we've got too many people that just want to watch from the sidelines and just kind of just take it all in for me, rather than realizing that part of that relationship is multiplication. Right. So this question is awesome.
Yeah, I would just say, if we could, he asked specifically, what have we discovered as staples to make sure that that's happening? Number one is a shift in our mentality is a key key staple. And what I mean by that is understanding that, like, there are so many times that we will go to a man and say, hey, would you consider being a mentor? Well, you know what? I've got a lot of other things going on right now, and I'm not sure I have the time for it. And my response to that every single time is like, this is not an option. Like, it is a mindset to say, I must do this. I'm not saying you must do this through Men of Iron. That's not,
right.
But we all should be mentoring, discipling, and in that process, another staple of that, if like part 2 staple, is throwing the challenge out to whomever we are mentoring or discipling and saying, hey, listen, this for you now, you've been given a gift, and now you must steward this well. And who are you going to invite now into this journey? And so I think a staple is just this intentional process of not only making sure that we're engaged in discipleship and mentorship, but that we are also, there's some sort of intentional process in that where if we're doing it, we've got to throw the challenge out to the guy that, and whether it's inviting somebody else into that meeting or whether it's releasing him, whatever that may be, there's got to be some intentional mind shifts. And that, to me, has been the staple as far as to assure that it's got to be done. It's got to be, I've found that being part of a group that's doing it together in your community or in your church brings immediate accountability. That's another staple to that.
Yep.
But I think it's just this, we've gotten so caught up in what we're doing for a living and the money that we're making and the houses that we're buying, the cars that we're driving, and the gifts that we're buying, and we've completely lost sight of what's really important. And that's a culture thing. Yep. And that's a staple that we need to make sure that we're on. We're stapling hard.
The thing that comes to my head when I look at this question for off the top is transparency. Like, we need to be real with people. Like, if we expect and want to build deep relationships, not even just with other men, but with family and friends, like, we need to be real with people and open and honest. And that's a key component to any mentorship for sure, is you got to open up, man. If you're just going to be a closed door the entire time, you're not going to grow, you're not going to build a relationship. It's going to be a waste.
Any other staples that you guys can think? I think I agree with all those. I mean, I would just add this one, and that is just the rhythm and the pace at which we're living. Again, this is like an intentionality component of the mentoring and discipleship process, but like, multiplication will not happen when we fall victim to the pace at which our culture is telling us we should live at. And I think, again, that is a mindset of being intentional about, I think that's really why we see these feasts that were laid out in the Old Testament. When you look at, we just came off a really good sermon series in our church about this, but when you look at the biblical holidays, the purpose of those were for people to pause and to realign themselves, the Jewish people to realign themselves with what God was asking them to do, who he was calling them to be. And so every single feast had a different purpose, but it was all about realigning. And I think we need to follow that model to a certain degree of rhythm as Christians, to say, hey, how and when and where are we pausing, right? And what questions are we asking? Not just me, but my wife and our children, and as a family, are we pausing? As mentor and protege, are we pausing to reflect on what's happened over the last 90 days, 30 days, 30 hours, whatever it may be, and am I aligned? Because if I'm out of alignment, that's you've got to find the rhythm and the peace and the grace in that to be able to move forward. And so I think a staple for multiplication is pausing and reflecting and finding new rhythms. And finding the grace in that as well.
That's good. Well, thank you to everyone who submitted a question, and thank you to G and JW for joining us today. That is episode 20 of the Men of Iron podcast. That puts a wrap on 2018 for us.
In the books.
Man, you can go to menofiron.org/MOI podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. You can watch the video version on our Facebook and YouTube. And leave a review.
Yeah.
Let us know. Let us know how we're doing.
Jeez.
Leave a comment, on Facebook, wherever you're listening to this. Just let us know, if we're terrible, or if you enjoy it, or what you want to hear in 2019.
You know what? Since it's Christmas and you guys both blame me for being a Scrooge, here's what I'm going to do. If anybody shares this video on Facebook, then what we'll do is your name is going in the drawing for a nice Men of Iron hoodie.
Wow.
I know.
Man.
They are nice.
Look at
They're
this.
warm, cozy.
Yeah.
One from Santa Claus, or from Scrooge to Santa Claus. And just
So make sure you put that in the comments,
All right,
Stevie.
I'll put that in there. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you to our sponsor, Utility Keystone Trailer Sales. That's a wrap on 2018. See you guys in the new year.